Hi, everybody. So, I'm not here, but you're in really good hands with your sub Mary, and I want to introduce to you the cartoon assignment that you're going to be working on. And it's not due until Friday, March 2nd, so that does mean that I'll be back for block day and you'll have an opportunity to ask me questions. So don't worry too much about the fact that you're working on this when I'm not here. So in any event, let's introduce the assignment. So your instructions, you are to create an entertaining, informative, and coherent political cartoon that shows your understanding of either the entire Arab-Israeli conflict, an aspect of any of the unit's readings, or any of the topics discussed in the unit. And in addition to that, you should include a detailed and thoughtful explanation, which is at least one paragraph, but a pretty fleshed out paragraph, about 7 to 10 sentences. And your goal within the cartoon is to do just one of the following. So don't try to do more than one, it may make your job much harder. You really just want to zero in on one of the following things below, right? You need to either advocate an opinion or point of view on an issue of the time period, intelligently make fun of a particular point of view from the time period, or ironically comment on the events of the time period. And the submission is, depending on the way you choose to do it, it's due the day of class, at the start of class, on Friday, March 2nd. So that's next week. All right, so I'm not going to walk through this. You can pause and just read this for yourself. But here are the logistics. So if you are making your cartoon digitally, instead of the back, you would just include this information on another page. All right, cool. So we've done a lot of practice in class, but let's just do a little bit more of an overview in case we feel rusty on political cartoons. Okay, so cartoons, right? They are sometimes also called editorial cartoons, and they're illustrations or sometimes full comic strips that contain political or social messages that usually relate to current events or also personalities or people, right? So it's important for us to realize that second part because we need to get more familiar with faces in this unit, and here's a perfect example for us to practice on. So you might recognize Yasser Arafat already, but you may not recognize this gentleman here. This is Yitzhak Rabin, who was the Prime Minister of Israel during the Oslo Accords of 1993. Okay, so that's the context. And I'm not going to walk you through this cartoon, but I'd like you to now pause. And I'm going to have Mary have you discuss this in groups briefly. So walk yourself through this cartoon in the typical fashion. If you forget the instructions, it is to identify the main idea, to identify at least two symbols within the cartoon to back that up, and also to infer the artist's bias from the information that you provided. So we're going to pause and you'll do that now. All right, let's talk a little bit more about symbols. So here we see a dove with an olive branch in its mouth. And in case you're not familiar with this symbol, both the dove and the olive branch are a symbol of peace. So you need to ask yourself when you're analyzing cartoons what you actually see and why that matters. So, of course, symbols are far beyond just these few categories. We could go back to this cartoon and say, okay, what are the symbols here, right? Maybe you mentioned the tank, for example, or you mentioned the flag. So those are all symbols as well. It's really important when you're making your cartoon to include some sort of symbols, and they need to be very tangible, explicit, and specific examples, because otherwise the person seeing your cartoon may not get it. So think about the cartoons that are difficult for you to understand. Is it because the symbols are not clear? Is it because there is a symbol and you don't understand it? So try to make sure that this is deliberate. And of course, you'll have an opportunity to explain that symbol in writing. So one more practice, right? And again, here we have the instructions that are pretty much the same as what we would do if we analyze an image on a test, right? So first, you want to think about the central issue. But sometimes we can do it backwards if we want, and we can start out here by looking at images or symbols. So a lot of times in class I say, what do you see before what do you think? Don't even worry about what it means, but what is physically going on in this picture? Where is it? Why is it there? And then start to figure out what's the point? What is the message? And then once you figure out the message, you can infer what perspective the artist might be coming from. And of course, because you're inferring it, if you're not sure, use language that suggests that. So you could say, given this detail, given whatever detail you mentioned, the artist's perspective is most likely X because blah, 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 right? It's very important for you to use that language if you are uncertain to make it clear that you're making an informed decision. And that's that. So, one last time, you want to pause, but this is also on haiku, because of course, in order to perform your best, you want to make sure you're clear with the expectations. So, here's the rubric, and here's the grade breakdown. All right, so if you guys have any additional questions, the easiest way, actually, to ask me is to comment on this YouTube video if you go straight to the link. But otherwise, you could send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But since I'm out of town and I'm with family, I will not be checking my email that often, but I will get a notification on my phone if I get a YouTube comment. So that's definitely the best way to reach out, and I don't want to feel don't want you guys rather to feel like you're lost in the woods when I'm not here. Um, but you're going to do a lot of activities before you actually get started to do more work on analyzing your own cartoons and making meaning of them. And then you're going to get to work. And we'll have a little bit of time on block day when I get back to finalize some of that work. And then we'll submit our final product on Friday. So take care. Hope you guys are doing great. And I will see you on block day. So long.